Hey there, welcome back to Marcelian Online, and I know you cannot get into groups, can you? Spending over 40 minutes waiting to get invited is a terrible experience, and playing a meta spec being the only solution sucks. What if I told you there is a way? What if I told you that if you are not meta, it's not a problem? Whether you like to admit it or not, if you don't bring value to a group, you will have a much harder time getting people to invite you. That's just the reality of the situation, while also accepting the fact that the harder the content is, raids or dungeons, the more that discrimination goblin is going to keep you from playing. Let's start by assuming you don't want to change what you play. It's what you like, it's your main character, you are paying for the game. It's not fair you don't get invites. Probably the best thing you can do is to join a community of people that are also in your situation. Don't you think it's really weird that almost everybody seems to have this problem, but you just won't team up amongst yourselves? Or maybe you do, and you have been left out. Well, here's your solution. Mythic plus friends, at least to start with. This is a Discord group of people all looking to form groups and do keys with one another. There are multiple channels of interest, particularly the LFG ones related to the key level you want to play at. People have and are still using this to augment their PUG experience and avoid the lack of invites. This is but one example, and guilds fall in this category as well. At the end of the day, WoW is an MMO that implies some social aspects for you to connect with. I can tell you right now, I would not be playing WoW if my friends wouldn't be playing alongside with me, or I wouldn't be in a guild with people I enjoyed playing. On top of this, there are plenty of people and groups that would prefer to play with people they know rather than meta classes, since there is another problem I didn't mention yet, which is the elitism and toxicity. You are either part of it or part of the solution. People being assholes is one thing, but leaving keys midway or just after a pull ruins pretty much every effort you or someone else puts into finding a group. It's hard not to leave groups sometimes as well. Some people join or create keys that are too difficult for their skill level, and they definitely don't advertise it. It's fine to want to push past your current skill level, but not knowing the proper mechanics is just way too punishing in this day and age. Forming your own community works as well. It can be as easy as starting with a whisper. Hey man, I like the way you played here. Wanna do some more? Can I add you on Battle.net? They might say no, but so far 99% of the people I asked have added me on their friends list, and no, they didn't do it because I and Marcelian make content on YouTube. It also helps people want to play with you if you are honest. Say stuff like, hey man, this is my first time playing this dungeon or this spec, and I'm a bit rusty. Is that cool? Assuming you are not doing this in a +10 or heroic raid. This should make it easier to start joining groups and communities that hopefully turn into your own pre-mates eventually. And hey, you can also join our streams. We do keys and raids pretty much exclusively with viewers almost daily. Many people got their portals on stream, and they're ahead of the curve achievements as well. And if anything, you can at least chat with us about WoW. Watch me be a total dumbass on camera while playing all specs in the game. Twitch.tv/MarcelianOnline from Monday to Saturday. Link is down below. So the next thing you want to do is prepare for the dungeon and raids. Listen, if you think games are supposed to be enjoyed and not stressed over, I agree, of course. And for WoW, that is LFR and heroic dungeons. You can queue into those. The issues of getting into groups don't exist, the mechanics are trivial or ignorable. But if you want to tackle tougher content, you have to keep in mind that you are playing an MMO. Other people will be involved. So if you don't take the time to practice or study your class and the content you are about to do, you are actively trolling the people that are grouping with you. Maybe it sucks that it's that way, but WoW is a game about performance and rewards, and usually these are the things that motivate most players today. That implies that everyone would do their best. I'm not saying be the best or be good, but work towards at least that goal. Read the dungeon journal, put some gems and enchants on your gear, practice your rotation on the training dummy, because once you get into groups, whether it is through the in-game LFG system or the online communities, you want to make sure that people are happy playing with you. There are of course plenty of resources for this, and I am sure you know of at least one. You just need to accept that this is how WoW is today, and if you want to do endgame PvE content, you have to tick those boxes. The most key things to understand about these dungeons is that whatever the meta ends up being, there is at least one dungeon that has something your class can address. It can be a dispel or a stun that you can do. You need to know these things and take advantage of them. You don't want to play an underdog spec, go into a dungeon, and also not even know how to exploit your one strength. For instance, in Priory of the Sacred Flame, priests and paladins can activate the buff in the courtyard for their entire party, which adds a decent damage boost to everyone. Cinderbrew has a few casts that, if not interrupted, require some dispels. The slows these guys put out happens right before a massive AoE comes out. Using Freedoms and Tiger's Lust and other slow removals can save a party member and them remembering you afterwards. Or the Bestial Wrath from the Wranglers that should be dispellable. Same with the Enrage at the start of Theater of Pain. If you are a Druid, Hunter, Evoker and Rogue, unless I missed someone, know that you can remove these in some way, and in some of these cases you will prevent a wipe for your group. If you are a class without Bloodlust, have drums ready in your bags. If you don't have a combat resurrect ability, buy or make some convincingly realistic jumper cables to help your fallen comrades off the comfy floor and back into the action. Little things like these go a long way into telling people you are someone worth playing with. Remember, all content is group content and we all need to help each other out. Don't be a deadweight, be an asset in all situations. Can you play a different spec or a role in your class? Especially a role, assuming it's a healer or tank? First of all, if you are pugging as a DPS player that's not a meta spec, you obviously want to play that spec because, well, you bought the game, you have the subscription, why wouldn't you? But are you flexible? If only to form a group of friends that will let you play what you like. Friends are people who will let you play what you want as long as you don't suck at it. A good friend never lets another friend suck at the video game. Wise words to live by. But similar to the previous point, you want to make your friends want to play with you. Sometimes you are a tank or healer short, and you could change your spec to one of those and solve the problem for you and your mates. Are you up for it? I play all of the specs of my class, and whenever I main a class with a tank or a healer role, I leave my loot spec to my main until I have my weapons and trinkets, and only then do I swap it over to a healer loot spec or a tank loot spec. Outside weapons and trinkets, all gear drops regardless of your specialization. Having it set to an off spec gives you the chance to loot an intellect weapon as an agility user, or a healer trinket. Definitely works for the vault, since if you still need DPS gear but a healer weapon drops, you can then make a choice. Is the chest piece upgrade worth it, or should you get a healer weapon and prep for future groups? Being able to off-spec can also help create a group composition. Synergy and utility matters, and it's kind of why Warrior sucks as a class, since it brings the utility that at least one other player already has. If you play a priest, try to join or apply to a group that would need a disease dispel, maybe even your mass dispel. Try to apply to a group that has a spec like Fire Mage that likes power infusion. Alternatively, if you are playing an evoker or paladin, you can join a group with a priest and help them with the mobility and immunes that they lack. This takes a bit of class knowledge and content understanding to know what utility you bring and how it synergizes with what other people are lacking. Unless you are already decided on what you want to play, choosing a main will definitely impact your ability to be in groups. Of course, everything I said until now comes full circle to this point. Groups need Bloodlust, combat resurrects, dispels, buffs, and DPS and HPS output. Pick a shaman if you want damage, curse and poison dispels, bloodlust and buffs. Pick a priest if you want power infusion, mass dispels, leap of faith, and stamina buffs. Pick a druid if you want a versatility buff, roots, knockback, and innervate, AoE incapacitates. Pick a mage if you want bloodlust, intellect buff, incredible defensives and utility, and so on. The spec you choose to play can be a bit more specific and personal, but you just follow the same rules and, of course, play a meta spec. I specifically left this last because it normally solves all of these issues, but if it was this simple, everyone would be a mage or a shaman at this point. There is a reason meta specs are good, and sometimes people make a mistake and think a meta spec is only one of the 5 specs that the highest rated Mythic Plus team pushes with, or one of the 20 specs the raiders in Race World first use. If the season requires a curse dispel, there are way more specs and classes that can perform. If the season rewarded killer single target and funnel damage, more and more specs would be coming up with that solution. If the season really wants the most amount of numbers, whether it is DPS, healing or tanking, then you really only have one option. But that is a package deal. It's not enough to play the best DPS, you also have to be good at playing it. There is no point in playing a meta spec if you suck at it. It's a combination of get the spec and the player, and it usually is the case that flavor of the month chasers chase so hard that they never stick to something long enough to master it or at least become good at it, so they won't even be a jack of all trades in the end. It's hard getting into groups because the game is harder than ever. Season 2 is definitely looking better than Season 1, but as long as the game is challenging and punishing, more and more players will be careful about who they invite because, I mean, you get it too, right? You don't want someone that cannot help raise the chances of beating the boss or clearing the dungeon in time. The rewards for failure are almost minimal on top of you losing the time investment. But you can be the person that applies to the group and says, I can dispel, resurrect, and not die to mechanics, even if your spec doesn't do the highest damage or healing. Which is not the case for Havoc Demon Hunter, which recently received buffs to its damage, maybe a bug or two, and also a talent that gives it the funnel damage I mentioned earlier. We have a video on it you can watch and see the new age of Demon Hunter in Season 2.